Welcome back to the God's Peculiar People podcast. End of May is upon us, and to be completely honest, the year has kind of gotten away from me a little bit. I had planned to continue creating episodes about people throughout the summer, but that's not going to happen with just the schedule that I have at the moment. But I don't want to leave you and the podcast hanging with no new episodes until fall. So I've come up with a plan that I think is pretty good, and I'm hoping you will enjoy it as well. So after a quick perusal of the internet, I could not find an audiobook version of Mary Slessor's biography by W.P. Livingston. If you happen to know of one, I would love to know about it, be able to listen to it. I'd like to hear someone else pronounce a lot of the names that are in it, but I'm going to do the best that I can. So I have taken it upon myself, since I cannot find one at the moment, to record, to the best of my abilities, the book Mary Slessor, I forget the exact title now. Mary Slessor, Pioneer Missionary, I believe it is, by W.P. Livingston, and we're going to give that a try this summer. Will it be any good? Well, you get to be the judge of that. Do you think the audio quality sounds good? Am I reading it slowly enough, quickly enough? I mean, you can always speed me up. That's pretty simple. On platforms like Spotify, you can make me go at 3 times the normal speed. If you can listen to me at that fast, have fun with that. I cannot read any faster and not make lots of mistakes. I think I've already recorded a couple sections of the book. Some of them are double in length what they should be, just because of all the mistakes that I've made, so we're working on that. My second reason for recording Mary Slessor's book is that there's so much we don't know about her life. Listening to other podcasts about her, they all seem to focus on the same stories: her drunken father, the boy who swung the lead at her head, etc. But this book by W.P. Livingston, in particular, I think contains so many more stories that can help us learn more about her, learn more about how to be a better Christian if we read them. So now, my goal this summer is to read this book first, and then I would like to read a second one. Now, I would love to know your suggestions for a second book, but there is one major thing you must keep in mind when suggesting books. It has to be a book that is in the public domain. So this means that either the author has given it, placed it right into the public domain, so meaning anyone can use it, read it, do whatever they want with it, or it has to be a book that's copyright is over 100 years old. So it initially was published over 100 years ago. Like the last edition was published over 100 years ago. So that would be the stipulation. Now, there are some really good places to find books that are in the public domain. One of the best places on the web to find those type of books is Project Gutenberg. You can type in a title, an author, or even like the person's name, a person you want to see a biography about, and they will pop up the works that are in the public domain and that have already been converted over into an ebook. So there are other books that are in the public domain, but they've been like photocopied or scanned. The pages have been scanned into the public domain, and that can be really tricky to read sometimes because of stains on the pages, things like that. But if you found one that is on like Project Gutenberg or says it's in the public domain, let me know. I would love to know about it, and maybe it'll be the second book we read. I have a couple ideas already in the works, but if you have one, let me know. And if you guys find you like this content, then perhaps it could become a second episode every week. So we could do one episode about a person and then make a second episode on another day of the week where we read a book about a person, or maybe even a place. We could read a little bit about a certain mission field, potentially, or a special field of missions, something along those lines. So keep that in mind. If you are interested in that, you can leave me a comment on Instagram. Would be the best place to do it. You can just send me a DM, or you can comment on the most recent post. That will work as well. So that's kind of all I have to say, but that would be like a really short podcast if I left you guys right here. So I'm not going to do that to you. I want to give you a little bit of a taste, a little bit of an insight as to what my reading a book is going to sound like going into the summer. So we have a couple of the first sections of Mary Slessor's book that we're going to add here now for you to listen to. So the episodes throughout the summer, there will be no major introduction. It'll just be an introduction saying this is Mary Slessor's book, and then it'll tell you the title, and then it will end with some music when we stop at that section, and we'll go on from there. So for now, here is the first part of Mary Slessor. Mary Slessor of Calabar, Pioneer Missionary by W.P. Livingston. Mary Slessor of Calabar, Pioneer Missionary by W.P. Livingston. Prefatory Note. Life for most people is governed by authority and convention, but behind these there lies always the mystery of human nature, uncertain and elusive, and apt now and again to go off at a tangent and disturb the smooth working of organized routine. Some man or woman will appear who departs from the normal order of procedure, who follows ideals rather than rules, and whose methods are irregular, and often, in the eyes of onlookers, unwise. They may be poor or frail, and in their own estimation of no account, yet it is often they who are used for the accomplishment of important ends. Such a one was Mary Slessor. Towards the end of her days she was urged to write an autobiography, but was surprised at the proposal, and asked what she had done to merit the distinction of being put in a book. She was so humble-minded that she could not discern any special virtue in her life of self-sacrifice and heroism, and she disliked publicity and was shamed by praise. When the matter was pressed upon her in view of the inspiration which a narrative of her experiences and adventures would be for others, she began to consider whether it might not be a duty. She never shrank from any duty, however unpleasant. Her belief was that argument and theory had no effect in arousing interest in missionary enterprise, that the only means of setting the heart on fire, the magnetism of personal touch and example. And she indicated that if account of her service would help to stimulate and strengthen the faith of the supporters of the work, she would be prepared to supply the material. She died before the intention could be carried further, but from many sources, and chiefly from her own letters, it has been possible to piece together the main facts of her wonderful career. One, however, has no hope of giving an adequate picture of her complex nature, so full of contrasts and opposites. She was a woman of affairs, with a wide and catholic outlook upon humanity, and yet she was a shy solitary, walking alone in Puritan simplicity and childlike faith. Few have possessed such moral and physical courage or exercised such imperious power over savage peoples. Yet on trivial occasions she was abjectly timid and afraid, a sufferer from chronic malarial affect, and a martyr to pains. Her days were filled with unremitting toil. Overflowing with love and tender feeling, she could be stern and exacting, shrewd, practical, and matter-of-fact. She believed that sentiment was a gift of God, and frankly indulged in it. Living always in the midst of dense spiritual darkness, and often depressed and worried, she maintained unimpaired a sense of humor and laughter. Strong and tenacious of will, she admitted the right of others to oppose her. These are but illustrations of the perpetual play of light and shade in her character, which made her difficult to understand. Many could not see her greatness for what they called her eccentricities, forgetting or perhaps being aware of what she had passed through, experiences such as no other woman had undergone, which explained much that seemed unusual in her conduct. But when her life is viewed as a whole, and in the light of what she had achieved, all these angles and oddities fall away, and she stands out, a woman of a unique and inspiring personality, and one of the most heroic figures of the age. Some have said that she was in sense a miracle, and not, therefore, for ordinary people to emulate. Such an estimate she would have stoutly repudiated. It is true that she began life with the gift of a strong character, but many possess that and yet come to nothing. She had, on the other hand, disadvantages and obstacles that few had to encounter. It was by surrender, dedication, and unwearied devotion that she grew into her power of attainment, and all can adventure on that same path. It was love for Christ that made her what she was, and there is no limit set in that direction. Such opportunity as she has lies before the lowliest disciples. Even out of the commonplace love can carve heroines. There is nothing small or trivial, she once said, for God is ready to take every act and motive and work through them to the formation of character and the development of holy and useful lives that will convey grace to the world. It was so in her case, and hence the value of her example, and the warrant of telling the story of her life, so that others may be influenced to follow aims as noble, and to strive, if not always in the same manner, at least with a like courage, and in the same patient and indomitable spirit. First phase, 1848 to 1876, ages 1 through 28. A Scottish Factory Girl. Chapter 1, Saved by Fear. When the founding of the Calabar Mission on the west coast of Africa was creating a stir throughout Scotland, there came into a lowly home in Aberdeen a life that was to be known far and wide in connection with the enterprise. On December 2nd, 1848, Mary Mitchell Slessor was born in Gilcomston, a suburb of the city. Her father, Robert Slessor, was a shoemaker. Her mother, an only child, had been brought up in a home of refinement and piety. She is described by those who knew her as a sweet-faced woman, patient, gentle, and retiring, with a deeply religious disposition, but without any special feature of character, such as one would have expected to find in the mother of so uncommon a daughter. It was from her, however, that Mary got her soft voice and loving heart. Mary was the second of 7 children. Of her infancy and girlhood little is known. Her own earliest recollections were associated with the name of Calabar. Mrs. Slessor was a member of Belmont Street United Presbyterian Church, and was deeply interested in the adventure going forward in that foreign land. I had, said Mary, my missionary enthusiasm for Calabar in particular from her. She knew from its inception all that was to be known of its history. Both she and her elder brother Robert heard much talk of it in the home, and the latter used to announce that he was going to be a missionary when he was a man. So great a career was, of course, out of the reach of girls, but he consoled Mary by promising to take her with him into the pulpit. Often Mary played at keeping school, and it is interesting to note that the imaginary scholars she taught and admonished were always black. Robert did not survive these years, and Mary became the eldest. Darker days came. Mr. Slessor unhappily drifted into the habits of intemperance, and lost his situation. And when he suggested removing to Dundee, then coming to the front as an industrial town and promising opportunities for the employment of young people, his wife consented, although it was hard for her to part from old friends and associations. But she hoped that in a strange city, where the past was unknown, her husband might begin life afresh and succeed. The family went south in 1859, and entered on a period of struggle and hardship. The money realized by the sale of the furniture melted away, and the new house was bare and comfortless. Mr. Slessor continued his occupation as a shoemaker, and then became a laborer in one of the mills. The youngest child, Janey, was born in Dundee. All the family were delicate, and it was not long before Mary was left with only 2 sisters and a brother, Susan, John, and Janey. Mrs. Slessor's fragility prevented her battling successfully with trial and misfortune. But no child could have been trained with more scrupulous care. "I owe a great debt of gratitude to my sainted mother," said Mary long afterwards. Especially was she solicitous of their religious well-being. On coming to Dundee, she had connected herself with Wise Heart Church in the east end of the Cowgate, a modest building, above a series of shops near the Port Gate, from the parapets of which George Wiseheart preached during the plague of 1544. Here the children were sent to the regular services with a drop of perfume on their handkerchiefs and gloves, and peppermint in their pockets for sermon time, and also attended the Sunday school. Mary's own recollection of herself at this time was that she was a wild lassie. She would often go back in thought to these days, and incidents would flash into memory that half amused and half shamed her. Some of her escapades she would describe with whimsical zest, and trivial as they were, they served to show that, even then, her native wit and resource were always ready to hand. But very early the change came. An old widow, living in a room in the backlands, used to watch the children running about the doors, and in her anxiety for their welfare, sought to gather some of the girls together and talk to them, young as they were, about the matters that concerned their souls. One afternoon in winter they had come out of the cold and darkness into the glow of her fire, and were sitting listening to her description of the dangers that beset all who neglected salvation. "Do you see that fire?" she exclaimed suddenly. "If you were to put your hand into the flames, it would get sore. It would burn ye. But if you do not repent and believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, your soul will burn in the blazing fire for ever and ever." The words went like arrows to Mary's heart. She could not get the vision of eternal torment out of her mind. It banished sleep, and she came to the conclusion that it would be best for her to make her peace with God. She repented and believed. It was hell fire that drove her into the kingdom, she would sometimes say. But once there, she found it to be a kingdom of love and tenderness and mercy, and never throughout her career did she seek to bring anyone into it as she had come, by the process of shock and fear.